Before we jump into this episode, I want to remind you that while Caitlin and Sophia are dietitians, we're not your dietitians. This means the information shared in the Food Freedom Fertility podcast is intended to entertain, educate, and inform. It is not a substitute for medical care. This information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making any changes. Welcome back to Connections Corner, where you send us your reviews, your comments, your emails, and we read them right back to you. This is us trying to reach out in connection to you. So you're not just speaking into a void and communicating how our podcast is affecting your life and no one's listening. We want you to know that we are listening. And so today we are going to read a review back to you. Today's review comes from Tiffany.
Tiffany says, your best TTC friends. I've listened to the show way too long to have not already written a review. My previous podcast app didn't actually have a review option, so here we are. Caitlin and Sophia are such a dynamic duo, filled with brilliant insight and humor to educate and empower women on their TTC journey with nutritional advice and so much more. I found their page after a loss in 2021. Their guidance accompanied me as I got pregnant again and have since delivered a beautiful baby boy who's almost 6 months old. If you need some advice along the way, these two have so much wisdom to share. Yeah, girl.
Yeah, girl.
I love how she put that in there.
That is awesome. Oh, Tiffany, thank you so much for this beautiful review. Congratulations on your sweet baby born. We could not be happier for you. And we feel so honored that you left us such a beautiful comment and that our work is touching your life. Welcome to another episode of Food, Freedom, and Fertility. I am your host, Sophia Pavia, and I am all by my onesie today because dear Miss Caitlin Johnson, my co-host and fellow dietitian, her internet took a big doo-doo and it is not working today. So she has got the internet technology technician guy at her house trying to fix that problem. So I am going to be hosting this episode today, but we have an absolutely wonderful guest, and that is Miss Macy Coleman. Welcome, Macy.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
We're really pumped to have you on this episode. So can you tell our listeners just a bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am, yes, a registered dietitian nutritionist. I specialize in women's health, hormones, fertility specifically. I have a virtual private practice called Well Women Nutrition. There I see people from all over the U.S. virtually. And I really deep dive into hormone harmony. I guide women on the path to motherhood and beyond that, and everything, on the outsides and in the middle. I use tailored and evidence-based testing, functional testing, nutrition at the core, a lot of lifestyle solutions to support women throughout this journey. I have a bachelor's degree in nutrition and dietetics from Arizona State. I did my internship in San Diego, actually at the VA.
That's where I am right now, listener, in case you didn't know. That's where I live.
Great to live there for a year, I will say. But I utilize a functional integrative nutrition approach because I know that the body has an innate capacity to heal itself with proper support and guidance. And that's exactly what I do to support women.
We love it. So I came to know Miss Macy just through Instagram, really, looking at her reels and posts and seeing stuff that she's doing. And she just fills in, I would say the most common thing I see you doing for women is really like filling in the gaps where traditional fertility care has fallen short, where people are kind of told, hey, your labs are normal. We can do an IUI, but, that's really not going to do much. What I recommend is IVF. And then you're like, man, that's crazy. Like, I'm healthy. I'm 32. Like, what the heck? This shouldn't be the case. And I have seen you really dive deeper with so many women and find problems that have solutions and then go on to grow their families without using these expensive and, sometimes methods that rub against people's faith or their ethics or just what they believe is right for them and their family, and you provide a solution or a part of a solution for them. So I would say that would be how I describe your practice too, and what I've seen you do, and why I was like, we gotta have this girl on.
I love that. Thank you. You are spot on.
Well, one of the things I really wanted to talk to you about today, Macy, was I see you doing testing that is outside the box and finding things that traditional allopathic practitioners maybe aren't even looking for. And one of the things that I have seen you find and test for and treat is parasites, which is just like maybe not something you would think about when you think about fertility. Like, what is there, like a worm in my uterus? Like, what are we talking about here? Why would parasites impact my fertility, and how does that all fit together? So I would love for you just to start up the conversation with our listeners about that today.
Yeah, so parasites are interesting. There are, I mean, no one is really immune really from getting them. They're everywhere. They don't know borders. So I hear a lot of people say like, oh, only if you travel somewhere, only if you live in a place where parasites are abundant, that's when you'll get them. They don't know borders. They get on a plane, they come with us, they jump on our food is shipped to the US. Like, it can be anywhere. There's a statistic that says about 85+% of people in North America alone have at least one parasite. But honestly, that number's pretty arguably closer to 100%.
Yeah.
So when it comes to parasites, we're just constantly exposed to them. I think there was a study once done in Wisconsin, actually, where they looked at like 40 different salad bars, and like close to like 35 to 39 of them had parasites that were tested for. So these things are not that great at hiding. They're just everywhere. And so we're exposed to them. It's just about not everyone will get the infection, or not everyone will get the infection that turns into a problem. So it's all about the host, because parasites, they feed off the host. They benefit from us, from our nutrients. So the ecosystem matters, right? So you can get exposed to the same thing as anyone else, but how does your immune system work? Do you have good stomach acid? There's a lot to that picture, but it's really about you and your unique body's resilience.
That is so poignant. A piece of my health story: when I was really young, I was probably like 12 years old. I was having like so many stomach aches all the time, like all of this weird nausea and such. And I went to a gastroenterologist. They did some testing and they found maybe a parasite. And it was sort of weird because the doctor was like, it's a blastocyte, or blastocyst. It's,
Yeah.
The data is kind of skewed. For some people, it seems to be parasitic. For others, it seems to be sort of like a part of their natural flora. And there is some gray area when it comes to what are we considering pathogenic and parasitic, and what is maybe a neutral presence in our body that's just sort of along for the ride, and what is maybe even serving us some benefits. Because I know that there are parasites that eat things like mold and eat things like heavy metals. And so we have these organisms in our body and we think they're so detrimental to our health, but really the issue is that we're living in a moldy house, or we have eaten contaminated food that has metals and stuff in it, and the parasites are actually cleaning up some of the mess where we think, and this is why when you like go to your doctor, they're not like, okay, let's like test for this, because I guess the way I would describe it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of like, it's not a problem unless it's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. It's like basically what allowed these things to get the upper hand. As I mentioned, it's like the statistic is arguably close to 100% of people have them. So are we treating every single person for parasites? No. When do I treat? I really specifically look at like the overall picture, right? Like what's going on? What's the deeper issue? Is there a lot of surface level stuff we can work on? One thing that I heard a long time ago that I love is that parasites, they love bad habits. So people that are really exposed to a lot of toxins, those that are having a diet that's really high in sugar, because parasites love that really high blood sugar, right? So they mop up that glucose that's sitting in the blood. They love junk food and processed foods. You're right, they mop up a lot of toxins. So anyone that is exposed to heavy metals, the mold, yeast, things like that. So it's, what does the whole picture of the person look like? So a lot of times I'm treating one when stuff shows up on a GI map to say, hey, you have a toxin, maybe like blastocystis hominis, maybe the
that
one
was the one that I had.
Yeah. So it's, and they say the same thing every time. They're like, we don't know how pathogenic it is, which I mean is there is a lot of gray area there. But if something's popping up on a test and someone has symptoms, I'm for sure going to treat that or support them so that their body can treat it. So it's like, do you have overt symptoms? A lot of those overt gut symptoms, but also a history of exposure to parasites. You've traveled somewhere. Again, they're popping up on a GI map or another test. But that's a caveat because we're not just shedding them in the stool. And when we send in these stool tests, we're doing like a microscopic amount of stool. So what if they're just not in that sample? So we can't utilize testing like that to go off of. But also I do a lot of toxin testing with my clients because fertility and toxins go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And parasites are there for a reason. They do a job. So they're going to follow the toxins. The higher the burden, the higher the toxin burden, the higher the parasite issue. So when someone kind of presents like that, like, hey, I've had mold exposure, whatever it is, these things popping up on a test, we're going to go ahead and treat that. But also one of the big places that I find me treating parasites is really when people get stuck or they have like unexplained, unresolved symptoms. Think about like unknown infertility.
Okay.
Right? That's just the worst. And so we've done everything, right? They come to us, they're like, I've done all the tests. There's nothing obvious. No one knows what's wrong. My doctor's like, you have to do IVF, and either they haven't gone down that pathway or they have and it's failed. But there's still nothing wrong, right? All the tests are normal. And so they're like, where do I go now? Well, they come to us and we think outside of the box and we give them solutions. And so in certain situations, I'm like, hey, let's look at your toxin burden. Let's consider detox. Let's treat you for parasites. Because at that point, parasites like to go into the gut first, right? It's coming off of our food, our water, things that we're putting into our mouth. They're in the gut, but if the gut is leaky, if there's issues there, they're going to go systemically. And so those first line symptoms can be like constipation or diarrhea or really gut dysbiosis symptoms, but then they're going to lead to other things, full body inflammation, unresolved symptoms, unexplained infertility. And so that's where we're like, hey, maybe this has been a problem for a really long time and no one's addressed it. Let's go back to the basics, the foundations.
So it's really just looking in corners in places where nobody else has looked. I think that's so poignant when it comes to fertility care, because I feel like a lot of mainstream fertility care, it's kind of like popping your head in the closet and be like, I don't see what we're looking for in here. And then, a lot of times if there's like a monster in the closet, you pop open the door, you can see it standing right there. But what about starting to look behind the clothes and picking up the shoes and checking in the corners? And that is more what happens when you work with a functional practitioner like Macy. And a lot of times doctors will find, the monster in the closet with their cursory look. And I would say like probably the majority of people do fit into that paradigm, but that's not who we end up working with. We end up working with people that don't fit into that, and they need other solutions, because unexplained infertility is not a thorough diagnosis and has no treatment. So we got to look for something else. There's a reason your body is not performing this basic biological function of reproduction. Everything around you is trying to reproduce, down to a single cell organism, a tree, a lizard. Everything around you is trying to reproduce. This is part of life. I remember when I was like a kid in biology class, they had like what are the functions of life? It's like consumption, excretion, reproduction. Like that's one of the things that happens and how we define whether or not something is even alive. And so if your reproductive function isn't functioning, it's because of something. There's some reason that this isn't working, because you're not just a broken organism that like, oh, well, humans just don't reproduce. Like that's not what's happening. There's something that's actually wrong. And so that's what you are digging for. We're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsor, and we will be right back to talk more about what are these symptoms, what are these tests, and what are these treatments so you can get the help that you need. We're taking a break to talk about our sponsor, Fertility Cloud. In working with hundreds of you ladies, we have noticed a problem that has come up. I know it's come up for me, Caitlin. It's come up for your clients as well. And that is not only finding a doctor who is going to know how to help you, but one that wants to. We have a lot of issues here, and sometimes getting a simple blood test or actually getting a medication or talking to someone who's actually an expert in fertility can not only take an insane amount of time, but it can feel like you're fighting your doctor.
Yeah, or you're playing like Russian roulette to get in front of somebody who actually cares. We are so excited to be partnering with Fertility Cloud because they have a solution for all of these frustrations. Just last week, I had a client that needed right now care, and we couldn't get her in front of an OB. And she got a same-day appointment with Fertility Cloud and spoke to a reproductive endocrinologist and had a prescription that she needed in her hand hours later. This is a solution that our industry desperately needs, and we are so excited to present to you.
So if you're in a remote area and you have to drive 4 hours to go see a doctor, or if you've been to multiple doctors and none of them seem to really listen or really care or want to take an approach that works for you, start up with My Fertility Cloud.
My Fertility Cloud has provided us a link, so check it out in the show notes. That will get you $25 off your first visit with one of their providers.
We're taking a quick break from this episode to talk about one of our sponsors, the Prenatal Nutrition Library.
We love the Prenatal Nutrition Library. It's a searchable database and app, which means you have answers within seconds and peace of mind that what you're eating during pregnancy is both safe and nutritious.
It's almost like having your own personal pregnancy dietitian in your back pocket that's going to not only tell you, is it safe to eat this? How much of that should I have? Yada, yada, yada. But give you actual meal plans so you know how to put it all together onto your plate today. And the meal plans are trimester specific, meaning, some women are kind of nauseous in their first trimester and maybe they need specific foods to help combat that. Prenatal Nutrition Library has got you covered. Or the fact that your baby's brain is growing rapidly in your third trimester and you need your nutrition to support that. Prenatal Nutrition Library meal plans has got you covered there too.
This is evidence-based information. Registered dietitians are in this app weekly answering members' questions. There's an exclusive podcast within the app that's run by Ryan, who is the prenatal dietitian that founded this entire thing. It's a wealth of knowledge and resources and will take you far beyond that one-page handout your doctor handed you that actually probably has out-of-date information about eating in pregnancy.
So head on over to the Prenatal Nutrition Library as soon as you get your big fat positive. Well, okay, first message me and Caitlin so we can do a happy dance with you. Then head over to the Prenatal Nutrition Library to get clear strategies to meet your nutrient needs, as well as to take the stress out of confirming what's safe and most optimal for you and your baby while you're pregnant. Use code FFF20 for 20% off. All right, now that we're back and we still have such an expert on this, so when you talk about symptoms, like what do you want the women listening to know? Like what are these symptoms and what should they know? Like what are they experiencing that would be like a red flag to you that you'd be like, you need to find somebody like me?
Yeah. Well, first off, I want to say the caveat here is that I mentioned earlier, testing isn't great. The testing can be the best ever, but we just might not pick out parasites because they're just really good at hiding from tests. And so it's not about that. It's also, the other thing is that the signs and symptoms can be super broad. So it's really important, if you think that maybe parasites are your issue, to work with someone that specializes in it, because I'm typically treating based off of my clinical experience and my clinical judgment versus an overt, signs and symptoms and overt testing. So things that we think about: any sort of gut issues, diarrhea, constipation, bloating, cravings. Cravings are a big one. So that's one thing I always tell my clients is that craving sugar is a big one.
Okay.
But really any type of cravings, because parasites are really good at changing our taste buds. They're really good at secreting toxins and enzymes and things that cause you to crave what they want, because they get to choose. And so I always tell my clients, cravings aren't a matter of willpower. It's either blood sugar dysregulation, parasites, or something else causing you to have these cravings. So that's a big one. But also deeper into the GI tract, we look at, if we can see it, we're looking for leaky gut, villi atrophy causing leaky gut, so just some damage, inflammation going on there. Food allergies, sensitivities, seasonal allergies, those are big too, because parasites upregulate immune reactions, IgE reactions. They trigger histamine, if anyone's ever heard of histamine. We take antihistamines when we have seasonal allergies to suppress those symptoms. So parasites can make histamine. They can also trigger histamine production. They have also parasites. When parasites die off, they can secrete up to 80 different types of toxins when they die off. So they harbor a lot of toxins, and a lot of those toxins have a high affinity for the brain. So I always tell people, those with like mood disturbances, depression, anxiety, headaches, migraine, fatigue, like brain fog, any of that, it's because the toxins that have that high affinity for the brain, and they can absolutely give you those overt like symptoms. The other thing that I always think about too with fatigue is that parasites are constantly, they're feeding off the host. They're taking things from us, right? And they're not really giving us much in return. So some of them, roundworms specifically, can actually, go back into science class when we think of this, every dietitian knows all about the Krebs cycle. So the Krebs cycle is what makes energy.
We called it the TCA cycle, but
Yes, I remember that too. But basically it's how we make energy so that we can function properly in general. And so roundworms actually target the Krebs cycle. They go in and they steal the ATP, the energy from us that we're actually making for themselves so that they can procreate. So that's a big one. They're kind of hijackers. That's what I think of, little hijackers. But we're also getting a lot of skin symptoms because our skin, I always think of the skin as like a second liver. We always talk about how important our liver is for detox. It filters all of these toxins, parasites, things that parasites are producing, and then is allowing this clean blood to get to our brain and our heart, right? But sometimes that liver gets bogged down. There's too much for it to do. And then our skin kind of becomes our second liver, and things try to detox through our skin. So sometimes we can see acne, rashes, eczema, big issues with skin when we have parasites. And then some more, I would say more specific ones are going to be anemia from an unknown cause. If you're not having really heavy bleeds every single month and you have anemia, there's a deeper issue. It's not super cut and dry, and we know that parasites love to eat iron, B12, folate, and they love to snack on our blood too, and all the nutrients that are inside there. So that's a big one, kind of unknown anemia from an unknown cause. And then teeth grinding, rectal itching, eye spots, floaters, night sweats. Those are some really big red flags for me. But also I tell people the other caveat is that parasites migrate, so they can go anywhere in the body. So symptoms can change and they can morph throughout the life cycle of a parasite. There are three kind of main parasites. We have ectoparasites, so those are kind of things that we can see on the outside of our body. So think fleas, ticks, lice, bed bugs. They essentially push a lot of viruses and co-infections into us. I know. Every time I talk about that, I'm I think my head itches a little bit, right? My skin. That's a big one, but it's a big type, but it's not one that I see that often unless there's like some tick-borne illnesses with co-infections, someone who has experienced a tick bite, and then we see like Lyme and Babesia and things like that. Helminths, so these are more of like the worms you can see with your eyes, roundworms, hookworms, pinworms. Protozoan, those are the ones I'm going to see most often. So that's going to be our single cell and visible to the naked eye type of parasites like Giardia and Amoeba. About 60+% of all parasites in general are invisible to the naked eye. So those are the ones we're going to see the most often.
Because a roundworm infection, it seems like that would be pretty clear for somebody that they would like, because my grandparents had roundworms once, and it was like they pooped and they saw worms in their poop. Like clearly there's a worm in my poop. And that scared the bejesus out of me. And so you feel like, okay, if you have that parasitic infection, it would be rather clear.
Sometimes, and sometimes not. So I will see a lot of clients that I walk through parasite cleanses will see visible worms in their stool, but they wouldn't see that unless they were treating it, because parasites are living inside of us thriving, and some of them can have a lifespan up to like 40, 45 years.
What are the ones that live for 45 years?
Sometimes liver flukes, so flukes can.
I didn't even know that could liver flukes
well.
happen to humans. I did not even know that.
Oh yeah, I've seen several people purge liver flukes. Sometimes they look like, what is that type of like pasta rice that's kind of flat and shaped oblong? Orzo. It kind of looks like orzo sometimes.
Okay, so they're
that's
little.
always what I think about. Yeah, they can be pretty little.
Gross! Okay. Oh my gosh. Listener, if you've had parasites, please know I'm not saying that you are gross, because you are not. This is happening to all of us. I am just grossed out that this even exists. And it's not you that's gross. The parasite is gross, not you.
Well, if listeners want to feel any better, I have done my own parasite cleanse a time or two, and it's a really humbling experience the first time you have to pull a worm out of your bum.
You had to pull a worm out of your butt?
Yes, me and several of my clients, yes.
Okay, tell me this story from beginning to end. I need to know.
Okay, so...
I feel like I'm on Fear Factor right now.
It was, again, a humbling experience. So I'm doing the parasite cleanse. It's a full moon, so parasites are actually more active around a full moon. This has been in so much research. It's very factual.
Yeah, I've heard that a few times.
So it's bizarre. So it was a full moon, and me and my husband were getting ready to go. It was the weekend. We were going to go to Lowe's, a walk down. The aisles of Lowe's are typically what us new homeowners are doing on the weekends. And we got in the car, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have like a level 10 stomach ache. I was just like breaking out into like a cold sweat, and I was like, I'll be right back. So he's like in the garage in the car. I run in here, I go to the bathroom, I immediately like feel relief, like instant relief. And I was like, oh, that was so weird. It came out of nowhere. And then all of a sudden, like I go to wipe, and I was like, something feels odd. So I looked down, and I was like, yep, there's a worm, and there is no way out of this besides to pull it out. So that's what I did. And it was about a few minutes later, I go and get in the car, and my husband's like, you look pale, what's wrong? And I was like, I just had to pull a worm out of my bum, and I'll never probably recover from that.
How big was it?
Probably.
The question everyone's wondering.
It was more than a foot, less than 2. I would say about 18
foot of
inches
worm?
or so.
Did it have like a face, or was it just like...
I did not look that close. I should have. I wish I would have taken a photo. I wish I would have like done the whole thing, but it was so alarming and so shocking because it happened so quickly that like right when I kind of started the parasite protocol, because we'll probably get to this, but you have to do a lot of work before you can purge and kill parasites. So my body was ready. It was like, yep, this is hanging out.
And then what happened after that? Did you like feel good forever? Or did it happen again in a few days?
It didn't, no, which again, parasites that we're purging, roughly 60% of them are invisible, so not that you would see. And sometimes you do have to do some digging. So some of them, I did not do that. It was evident for me, but some of my clients like to get chopsticks and gloves on and really get in there. And sometimes when you dissect the stool, you can see worms that are in there. But yeah, it didn't happen to me again, luckily. But I felt so much better. My acne started to clear up. My brain fog went away.
Beautiful.
Thank you. A lot of work. A lot of years went into having better skin from acne, but back to that root cause approach really helped.
Okay. Now we gotta know. So whoa. So had you done testing that showed you that this was in there? Were you just doing a prophylactic? I know I got something, so I'm just going to do this protocol. How did you arrive at this conclusion that you needed to purge some parasites?
Yeah, good question. So my testing was all negative. So no parasites ever came up on any testing of mine. But if I make my clients do something, I like to do it first so that I can know what their experience might be like. And I was getting ready to think about conceiving. So this was at least a year out. And I was like, let's do a detox, right? Because we know toxins play a huge role in fertility issues. And this was part of the detoxes, all the steps before prepping for it, and then the parasite protocol. The cool thing about the parasite protocol that I do is that it's not just targeting parasites. We're targeting viruses, bacteria, fungi, yeast, overgrowth. So it's kind of a one-stop shop, even though it doesn't seem like that because there is a lot of steps. But when I got a GI map test back, I had a lot of dysbiosis and overgrowth. So I knew it was going to target that as well. And the parasites were just kind of the cherry on top.
Macy, you are blowing my mind over here. We're going to take a little break here and hear from another sponsor. And when we come back, we are going to hear what she's talking about when it comes to the pre-protocol, getting ready for the purge, and all the things. Because I am glued to the edge of my seat on this here. So we will be right back.
Hey guys, we're taking a break from our episode, and I want to talk about something that's super confusing. When you head down the supplement aisle and you're looking for a prenatal, and on the prenatal bottle itself, it says, do not take if you're trying to conceive, pregnant, or breastfeeding. What the heck?
Yeah, it says, talk to your doctor if you are pregnant, could be pregnant, breastfeeding, postpartum, whatever. And every supplement has this. You go down the supplement aisle, you go shopping on whatever supplement website, and there's a disclaimer on every bottle of every single thing, which means that everything that you've been taking your whole life long is now a big question mark about whether or not you are potentially harming yourself by taking something where you're trying to be healthy. So that is why we partnered with Needed. Needed is a perinatal nutrition supplement brand that has a wide array of products specifically designed for women who are pregnant, trying to become pregnant, breastfeeding, or postpartum. So it's not just that these products can work if you're in that situation, or it's probably okay if you take it while you're trying to conceive. No. These products are researched, they are formulated, and they are put together specifically for women who are trying to conceive, pregnant, breastfeeding, and postpartum.
This answers so many questions. I always get asked, what can I take? It's cold and flu season. What's safe? Needed has an immune support. That's safe whether you're trying to conceive, pregnant. It's even safe for your little ones.
And it's not just immune support. They've got collagen. They've got hydration support. They have digestive support. They have prenatal multi. They even made a line for dudes.
Needed is somebody we're really proud to be partnering with. So head over to their website and use code FFF20 for 20% off your order.
Okay, we're back. Whew. All right. So Macy, tell us, what is this parasite cleanse protocol like? What are all these steps? You say there's things you need to do to get ready for it. Walk us through this on what you did yourself and what you do commonly with your clients and patients.
Yeah, I would love to. So it has to be a systemic approach. So number one is always reducing your toxin load because, again, parasites are there for a reason. Parasites mop up the mess. They clean up the heavy metals, the molds, the yeast, all the things we talked about. So one, we have to reduce their food source, reduce that toxin load. We have to stop feeding parasites with bad habits. And number two is opening drainage pathways. So this is a whole systematic approach in itself. I'll get to that in just a second. I'll go through all these. So open drainage pathways so things can get out. And then number three, supporting our immune system, because our immune system is really what's driving all of this. If our immune system is dysfunctional and impaired, we're going to allow these parasites to come in and cause a problem. Not that they're coming in, they're causing a problem because our little soldiers aren't fighting against them.
Yeah, because they're all around us. And we're not supposed to live in a world where we're never challenged immune-wise. You know, one of my good friends right now is dealing with some mold toxicity, and he lives in this totally adorable beach bungalow. It's really old, though, and his neighbors were renovating, and they pulled all this mold out of their cabinets, and he's like, oh, man. Ugh. He's been having some symptoms. He's like, man, I'm so worried that I'm going to have to move because of this mold. And I was like, well, hold on. It might not be that, because not everybody who lives in your complex has this. We can maybe work on your own immune system, your own mold resilience. And maybe that's sort of what we're talking about here. Your resilience, your ability to fight these things off, to be able to thrive in the presence of potentially parasites or mold or yeast or whatever. And it's not always about just avoiding everything forever.
Exactly. Yep. It's not, this isn't a scare tactic. This is like, hey, how can we support the body? So making sure to support the immune system. So eventually that immune system can get the upper hand and work in homeostasis. We also want to tame inflammation. So calm things down, really rebuild that gut lining, because we know leaky gut is a part of this whole picture. And then only then on step 4, is that 4 or 5? Step 4, we kill. We get to kill parasites, we get to kill dysbiosis, we get to kill yeast, and then our body is ready for that. Our body is ready to release these things intact and then restore and balance, because essentially, if we come in guns blazing, we're going to be in big trouble, right? Our body's not ready to just bring in botanicals, herbs, antibiotics, whatever it is that you're using to kill parasites. And parasites hold on to all those toxins and things we were talking about. So your immune system would just like go crazy. It would hate us, and your body just isn't ready for that. So those drainage pathways, if these things can't get out when we kill them, they're going to get stuck. And if anyone's ever heard of the term herxing, I don't know if you use that term in your practice, but that's basically having a lot of negative detox symptoms. So just not feeling good when we're detoxing.
You're mobilizing those toxin stores. Yes.
We're retoxifying you.
Yes. What this makes me think of. Have you ever been in like an old building with like a popcorn ceiling? And it's just hideous. Okay. Imagine if you decided to remove that popcorn ceiling, but you didn't move any of the furniture out of the room. You didn't own a vacuum or a mop, and you just scraped the popcorn off the ceiling. It would get rid of the popcorn on the ceiling, but would your house be beautified? Would it be a better place to live? Not at all. It would be all in all your furniture. It'd be in your bed. It would be in your linens. You'd be breathing it and walking through it and in your carpets, and it would be nasty. So before you remove the popcorn ceiling, we need to get the furniture out of the room. We need to lay down maybe some plastic to catch it. We need to have some tools to be able to clean up the crumbs and get this popcorn out so that it's not just fluffing throughout your house and grinding into your rug every time you walk. That is what I think of when it comes to preparing for either like clearing out some toxins or parasites, is like that popcorn ceiling analogy. You don't want to just stand up and start scraping that popcorn ceiling off and having it fall in your hair and all over all your belongings. You need to prepare your house before you can do something like that.
I am going to steal that analogy. That's such a good one. I witnessed and thought about that the entire time you were talking. That's perfect.
Yeah, that's really how I like to look at it. The other analogy I use all the time. Okay, you guys have heard me talk about this before on this podcast. Do you remember that movie Fern Gully?
Not I.
No, you're too young. You're too young. Listeners, if you're over 35, you have watched Fern Gully, okay? In Fern Gully, there is the hexus tree, which is like this big, thick, fat tree that the evil smog and environmental toxins from all of these building developers has gotten trapped inside this tree. And it's like all the evil against nature is this like black sort of sticky smoke stuff, and it's got like trapped inside this tree. Well, some new building developers come into town and they cut down the tree, and all of the smoke and the evil whatever, I don't even remember the name of that monster, but it like comes out and starts infiltrating Fern Gully, and all of the, this little bat and his like fairy friends have to try to, solve this environmental crisis for toddlers. And that is what I think. If you've seen Fern Gully, listener, you're right there with me. That is kind of what happens. It's like if you just start cutting down the forest and you don't have any method for handling all the evil that's going to come out of this hexus tree, it's just going to pollute all the other trees and all your little fairies and your lovable fruit bat. Macy,
That's also
you got to go
a good
see
one.
Here's your homework. Go watch Fern Gully. I think it's on Roku right now.
I will. Oh,
Yeah.
I will absolutely.
Listen, if you're not an environmental socialist by the end of that movie, then I haven't done my job. I'm just kidding.
Oh, I can't wait.
You're going to be watching it and your husband's going to be like, what is this? You're like, this is continuing education, please. This helps me. This is helping me care for my patients.
This is my homework.
Okay. So what do you want to kind of leave listeners with here? If you were in a situation where you were struggling to conceive and you were told, unexplained infertility, or let's just increase your dose of letrozole, let's do more, another round of IVF or whatever, what would you do as your next steps?
Yeah. And the first thing that comes to mind when you put it that way is to not be afraid to take a step back, because you taking a step back is actually propelling you forward. So I say this all the time when clients are like, but my clinic needs me to do the next cycle. I have to jump on this next cycle. It's like, says who, right? Like, no one says you have to jump on that next cycle.
Desk, that's who.
Exactly. And so take a step back from what you're doing and really, really work to build those foundations. And also, no, I don't want this to be like a scary episode where everyone's leaving like, oh my gosh, I'm surrounded by parasites and toxins and there's nothing I can do. I'm going to be infertile because of this. So the goal isn't to never get parasites or toxins again, because that's impossible, but it's about restoring homeostasis within the body, making sure those foundational processes can work properly, optimizing your immune system, rebuilding the gut terrain, keeping those drainage pathways flowing, remembering that stagnation breeds disease. Let's get stuff moving. Let's really, really support with things like nutrition, diet, lifestyle, all the things that really work to give us foundational health. And then removing interference is always the goal, because the body wants to work, right? The body wants to work optimally. It's just, we got to remove the interference. We got to remove the things that are causing the body to not work properly. That's how I think of it, is just from that foundational approach.
I love that. And that's such a message of hope at the same time. And that is really, being in the trying to conceive world, you wanted to be pregnant yesterday. You thought you were going to be pregnant a year ago, or more for some of us. And as you're watching your sister-in-law have a second baby, a third baby, you're watching your college roommate take her kids to middle school at this point, and you're still trying to get pregnant, it can make you feel like, I got to do it now. And like, you have to hit the gas and just bust through the wall and do whatever it takes to get that baby, like it's a race or something. And in reality, the cycle that you have before you turn 38 and the cycle that you have after you turn 38 are not statistically different. And so thinking, oh my God, but I'm going to be 38 in 2 months, Sophia, that is actually not really all that different. Getting pregnant this cycle or next cycle, statistically, your odds aren't really better or worse. And taking a step back from this crazy conveyor belt that can feel like it's going 100 miles an hour, and you might feel like, I want to go 100 miles an hour. I want to go so fast that I turn back time, because I just spent the last 6 years getting my doctorate in left-handed puppetry and got nothing to show for it. So now I better have a baby, or otherwise my life is a waste, or, wherever you are. That's probably not your situation. That's a little bit of a caricature of what can sometimes happen. Take a step back, just like Macy said, and maybe address some of the underlying health issues that can be driving some of this struggle. Because as we have seen, I've seen this, Macy, I know you've seen this, doing an egg retrieval and shoving an embryo into your uterus actually pretty rarely results in a healthy baby to bring home. And so if you think that that's gonna solve all the problems, maybe it will, but it's more likely that there's a reason here. And if your doctor hasn't given you a reason, obviously if your doctor's like, hello, you have no fallopian tubes, this is the solution that I have for you, girlfriend, or like your husband doesn't make sperm, so this is really the only way for you to have a biological child. If there is a diagnosis and this treatment makes sense for it, that is a very different story than we don't know why. It's unexplained infertility. I was told my only chance is to do IVF, and I need to do it soon because I'm about to be, insert whatever age feels scary to you. And but really addressing some of these issues, addressing your health, getting to the root cause, will result in not only better pregnancy rates, better pregnancy outcomes, healthier children, better postpartum, healthier life moving forward as a mother.
You're spot on. That's exactly it. Having that foundational health is it might feel like one step back, but it's really propelling you 10 steps forward.
Like a slingshot.
Exactly.
Got to pull it back a little bit before it can launch forward. I'm just on it with the analogies today. Okay, we're going to hear from another sponsor. And when we come back, we are going to hear about where you can get some of this help, like how you can find Macy and work with her if you need to, as well as where you can get this sort of support and what to do if you suspect that this may be happening to you. So stay put. We'll be right back.
Hey, it's me again, Sophia Pavia, registered dietitian nutritionist specializing in women's health, fertility, and optimal progesterone production. And I'm interrupting an episode of my own podcast to tell you about my online course called Ovulation Unlocked. So if you've been listening to our podcast episodes, you've probably heard a lot of things about basal body temperature, cervical mucus, cervical position, and tracking your fertility. Well, I have designed a 90-minute self-paced online course, which I titled Ovulation Unlocked, that puts all of that together and teaches you how to be the expert on your own fertility from home. This course is designed to put you in the driver's seat of your own fertility, not only so you can know what's going on with your body on any given day, but so that if you need medical help, you can show up to the appointment informed and ready to communicate. Too frequently, us women show up to our doctor's appointments and just say something like, I want to have a baby. And the doctor looks at you and says, good for you. Stop using birth control, start taking a prenatal, come back in a year if you're not pregnant. And that's all we get. However, Ovulation Unlocked puts you in the driver's seat, puts you in control of your fertility to where if you need help, you can show up to that appointment informed and ready to communicate your needs. So if you want to become the expert on your own body and your own fertility, head on over to my Instagram bio and tap the Ovulation Unlocked link today.
All right, we are back again with Miss Macy Coleman. So if right now the listener is like, holy crap, full of worms, How do I start working with you? What do I do? Can you answer that question for them?
Yes, so you can find me mostly on Instagram. That's where I spend a lot of my time. It is at Well Women with an E Nutrition. My website is wellwomennutrition.com. There you can find a lot of resources to work with me. So different ways you can. One, you can get on my wait list for a free discovery call so we can talk about what it is for you, what those next steps would look like. You can do one-to-one work with us. This is longer term support. This is where we guide you through protocols. We do a lot of functional lab testing. There's also mini packages where you can just do some lab testing with us, and then we go over your results and give you a protocol based on what we saw there. I do have a Fueling Your Fertility course. So the way this kind of links to our conversation today is because it's Fueling Your Fertility, it's the foundations of fertility. It's diet, exercise, lifestyle, toxin burden, all the things. So start there if that's where you want to spend your time, is building these things up. Again, one step back is actually 10 steps forward. So you can do my course that's self-paced, or you can join my waitlist to talk about what your future looks like and what would be the best fit for you.
Awesome. Wow. So there is a practitioner here before you, listener, that is ready to help you and has the resources laid out for you. So that is wonderful. And could you give us, like, let's say somebody like isn't sure if they're ready to work with you or maybe is on your wait list, what would be like your top 2 or 3 tips that they can maybe start implementing in their nutrition, lifestyle, like that they can just start doing today?
Yeah, I would say check your habits. What are you doing the most often? Most often, people know what they are supposed to be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. Those are low-hanging fruits. If you're doing something not great every single day, let's look there. Let's look at your toxin burden. Are you using some really toxic shampoos and conditioners? We know our scalp, those pores absorb more than any other place in our body. So just take inventory of what you're currently doing, and you're going to be able to pick out the big red flags. Start there, and then definitely work with a practitioner that's able to be your eyes and ears and see what else is that you might be missing.
Awesome. Okay, so that is something that you can start doing right now to start getting your health in line and getting ready for your baby, kind of preparing the nursery that is your body right away. And okay, so I think that it's time for a yeah girl. What do you think?
Love that. Yes.
All right. Well, since you are the guest, Miss Macy, we would love to hear your yeah girl first.
All right, so I think mine is going to be my client win. So
let's hear it.
We had a week with 6 positive pregnancy tests for our clients, which is amazing. Yes, oh my gosh, it was the best week. And the cool thing about that is that every single BFP was from someone in a totally different category. We had an IVF win. We had one of them I'll just talk about as the big one related to this podcast. She had 7 recurrent pregnancy losses. Years and years of not being able to conceive. She did it all. She tried it all, conventional, she did natural, couldn't figure it out. And we found that she had overt parasites on a test even. So we know that that's probably going to be a big deal. And we took 6 months to support her, and she got pregnant naturally, and she sent me a picture of her baby, and it was like all the warm and fuzzies, like, oh my gosh, her baby's born. Yes,
a baby in her arms, not just a positive test. Oh Lord, praise God. Listener, I hope that just breathed as much peace and hope into your heart as it did mine. Thank you so much for sharing that. Wow. What a miracle. That is beautiful.
Yeah.
What a yeah girl. Oh my gosh. That's one to end them all. Yeah girl. Yeah girl Macy for getting to be a part of that. Yeah girl new mama. And yeah girl or boy, maybe, I don't know, that just was born. That is so wonderful. Wow. that just refreshed my heart in so many ways. My yeah girl is like not going to be as exciting as that whatsoever. And so my yeah girl, I guess, is gonna. So I have been having so much shoulder pain, like old injury flare, that has made me like. First of all, I had surgery on this wrist, and now this. So I'm pointing to my left wrist. Those of you who are just listening to audio, but then my right shoulder has been unusable. So basically, I've been like no usable arms, and trying to live my life. It's been very hard. However, I have a neighbor who's a body worker, and she and I just like got in a conversation, and she has like a studio that she works at across town, but she lives across the street from me. So we cracked a deal where she's going to come over for like 15-20 minutes every day before or after she goes to her studio and just do repetitive work on me so that day after day after day she can loosen things up and help things get moving. So instead of like going to a massage therapist where they like do their whole routine and you have to like go in and get undressed and make the appointment and all the things, she's just going to like come in, do her thing, and then go on her way, and I can just pay her for these little sessions. And so I'm going to be able to get body work nearly every day, which is going to hopefully crack open this fuzzy crap shoulder that I've got going on and get me functioning again. So that is my win. So pumped about that. She just worked on me right before this episode, and I'm really hopeful that this unlocks the door. So that's my yeah girl.
Yeah, girl, that is divine intervention right there.
For real, yeah, girl for me, and yeah, girl for Rebecca, my neighbor. I'm so happy. Well, listeners, thank you so much. So if you enjoyed this episode, we want to make sure that you hit subscribe. If you are watching on YouTube or if you are listening to this via podcast, please subscribe, rate, review. I know that it seems tedious, but this is what helps other women find us. And there are absolutely ladies out there crying into their pillows right now because they have been struggling and they were not given any answers. And we want those gals to find us, to find Macy, and to find the solution for their fertility issues. So like, rate, review, subscribe, and we will see you again in the next episode. Hey, it's Sophia. If you love the show and want to continue your health and fertility journey using our resources, head on over to FoodFreedomFertility.com for show notes, links to products and services, information about our guests, and our newsletter. Again, that's FoodFreedomFertility.com. Thanks for listening.